Hi, welcome to this endorsement interview with two candidates for State Senate, Indiana State Senate, I should say, in the 6th District. We have the incumbent, Rick Niemeyer, a Republican, and the challenger is Roxanna Hanford, a Democrat. I'm Doug Ross, editorial page editor at the Times. Also in the room with us, we have Bob Heiss, editor, and Brian Vernellis on the other side of the lens. Let's begin with talking about what your qualifications are and you know what led you to run for this office. Roxanna, let's begin with you.
Well, I've spent 8 years as a county commissioner. I was in for 4, out for 4, and in for 4. During that time, I served on numerous boards, many of them in the State House, testifying before the Senate and the House of Representatives. Served on a number of boards as a county commissioner, as well as some of my personal interests, such as domestic violence and education. We're business owners that I think puts us in great contact with the public, and my background in accounting and small business management.
Okay, Rick?
I'm Rick Niemeyer. I spent 24 years as Township Trustee Assessor. I was on the County Council in Lake County, 2 years as State Representative. Served on a lot of local boards, 8 years on the Lake County Plan Commission. I was President of Lake County Plan Commission. President of South County Community Services, which do transportation and energy assistance and senior assistance for 9 townships in Lake County. So I've had a background in community service. I ran for state representative 2 years ago and got elected, and had 2 years in the State House. I served on the committees of transportation, local government, and government regulations were good committees for me. I come from a local government background. I'm a small business owner. I've been a small business owner all my life, and that's my background as far as where I've came from, what I've done.
Okay, first question we have is the first question everybody has is, what can you do to help create jobs? Rick?
Well, we did a lot the last 2 years in the General Assembly. We created some vocational stuff, educational stuff through the governor. Had some legislation that we passed. We need vocational training. We have jobs in Indiana that we can't fulfill right now because they're not qualified. They don't have the qualifications to do it. So we're looking very hard at getting that qualifications, doing more dual credit work and stuff in high schools, getting these children and students prepared for their education, whether it be higher education or just doing a job. And not all children and students are equipped for higher education. We need to make sure everyone has a job. We have a lot of partnering with business and manufacturing that is helping do this in high school, give them training. Because I think one thing that's kind of changed in the last 10 or 15 years that these companies want people that are ready to work, and they can't train them on the job anymore like they used to. We used to go to the steel mills and we would train them and give them 6 months. They want them ready to work when they get there. So we have to give them that training, give them that ability. They're good paying jobs, they have good benefits, and we got a really good structure in Indiana as far as what we did in the taxes with the corporate tax. We've got a decrease in that over the last 3 years. We're looking at the personal property tax. Indiana is one of the top 10 states for businesses right now for coming in. Well, we created a great atmosphere. Now we got to make sure we have a workforce that will be able to do those jobs.
Okay, Roxanne?
Well, I agree that we need more jobs in Indiana, given the jobless rate that we have. We've seen a decline in the job population as well as the quality of the jobs. So training and education for the jobs is key. We do have a partnership with our local school. We do have seniors that come in and train with us. And when I was county commissioner, we partnered with Ivy Tech and we brought them in for the vocational training of other students. We've lost, as I said, a number of jobs in Indiana. It's not just a matter of jobs. It's a matter of quality jobs. I've got many friends out there that are not working today because they can't get the salaries that they were used to. I had a gentleman friend of mine that applied for a job at McDonald's because he felt the responsibility to provide for his family. and because he had a master's degree, they wouldn't accept him. He was overqualified. I have personally heard this story 3 times. So the quality of jobs that they once had are not there, and those are the people that are contributing to our unemployment rate today. Yes, we need the vocational schools. Yes, we need those jobs. But we need to still concentrate on the quality jobs. And as I've always said, and this I guess would lean more towards the economic development, not just jobs, that if you don't grow, you die. And that's if you're a plant, an animal, a business, or a human being. If you don't grow, you die. But the key to that is you have to grow it physically responsible. You have to make it fit. To grow anything just for the sake of growing it doesn't necessarily make it a good thing.
Okay. Let's talk about economic development strategies for Indiana.
Oh, I opened that, didn't I?
Boy, you did. Why don't you expound on it?
Well, like I said, economic development, you have to grow. You have to. We've seen too many blighted areas throughout the Senate 6th District. There's too many of the small towns that are just closing up. So they need to decide their own fate. They need to decide which way they want to go. Do they want to continue with the blight? Do they want to preserve it in a historical manner? Or do they want to grow forward by bringing in new businesses and allowing other businesses to come in? It may mean other technology. It may mean changing some of this to factories. It may be bringing in the railroad. It depends. But I do believe that the people should have a voice on how they proceed forward.
Okay, Rick.
Well, economic development is something each community needs to look at very strongly, of course, because that's what makes those communities stronger. Part of the problem is that it seems like when you got a lot of consolidated cities, that there's a lot of cities and towns that are fighting for the economic development with other industries wanting to come in. We have to consolidate our efforts, especially in a county like Lake County, to make sure that we're trying to get them in and the competition is there, but make sure that we're working together through the county and through cities and towns to make sure that we get that development and get those good jobs coming in. We can't be out there structured trying to be pitted against one community and another community. You've got to spend your economic development money wisely. You got a lot of TIF stuff going on out there with the financing. I think some of that's got out of control somewhat because you got to bring in tax dollars and sometimes you're offering too much to get businesses in. We have a strong economic area here. We have transportation, we have rail, we have a lot of stuff that should bring a lot of businesses in. We got to be very careful of giving too big abatements and structuring that because we need tax base to increase in this county. And sometimes these TIF areas, when the companies here 8 or 9 years, they leave on us or they do something different. So we got to be very careful of our economic development and make sure that it's going forward. And now Lake County's got the income tax. There's a percentage of that tied to economic development. And this is going to be very strong, and we've already committed. The county committed $2 million to the RDA and the rail line already. So there's got to make sure that these things are going to work when we can have these dollars that are committed.
Speaking of the RDA, it's up for reauthorization. What would you do, Rick?
The RDA is a regional development authority that has done some good things through the counties of Porter County and Lake County. But they need to be more regional development authority. They need to branch out to the 6th District and to other areas. We need to make sure that we can get projects for them that make sense. I think their big commitment now, it looks like, trying to get in the budget next year is the transportation issue. They're trying to be in the front line of that, trying to get the issue going in the northern end and on-demand transportation in the south end. But they've done some good things. I've disagreed with some of their projects. I don't believe that they're supposed to be all tied to economic development. Some of them have done that. Some of them I don't think have. I mean, they've helped communities out, but they really haven't tied into regional development for all the area that they cover. I've met with Bill Hanna, I've met with the RDA consistently in the last 6 months because they are becoming downstate next year to try to get some things going. They have been meeting downstate with officials already and trying to get my point across where I think we need to look going in the future with this and make it a true regional development authority and make sure everyone in that area is in every community that has projects is looked at.
Okay, Roxanna?
In regards to that, I do believe that they have focused mainly on the northern part of their area. The Senate 6 district is so diverse. Lake County has its own uniqueness, as well as most of the readers here know, and the Times is covered. But the Senate 6 district also covers Newton County and Benton County, and it's very diverse. Whereas Lake County can do some of the TIF districts, and it's a great incentive. We've tried it. We've tried it in Newton County as a county commissioner. The districts, the county is too small to allow this. We have given tax abatements. We have created TIF districts. They've done TIF districts in the towns where they have their own authority to do so. A TIF district is so different than a tax abatement. A TIF district, nothing goes back to the schools. Nothing goes back to the libraries. It stays solely in that project. And when they do bail out on that project or they don't follow through on it, they don't end up paying those things back. So this doesn't help your economic development. As far as the regional development, I understand that they have come into areas such as Newton County. They've promoted events, but the events that they've promoted have really done nothing as far as promoting an economic development or a regional development. There's no place else. The things that they have done, they have not gone into areas where there's even development possible. So they need to be a little more astute about the way that they handle it, especially the farther south they get. You take that into Benton County, and it becomes even more less populated, and tax dollars being even more critical.
One of the things that Burns Harbor is doing is making a deal with the Dunedin School Board that, and I think Dunedin's supposed to approve it tonight, that X% of the TIF district revenue will go to the schools. So how much flexibility do you think, TIFs should have in terms of what dollars go to, infrastructure per se, and what should, continue to flow through to schools, libraries, etc., that they ordinarily would have had the TIF not been there? I mean,
My turn?
Sure.
Yeah. Who are we going to let decide make our rules? Are we going to let our elected governing bodies in Lake County, Newton County, Benton County, that would be your county commissioners, your county council, your plan commission, your BZA boards? Who are we going to allow to make these rules? These are the people that are elected locally to make those decisions for us. Now, they made the decisions to grant the TIF district. Now we're going to turn around and put the fox in charge of the hen house. We're going to let them decide how much they want to give back to the schools. What about the other entities that are losing out? And then if they do pay into these entities that are losing out, your schools, your libraries, and etc., why give them the TIF district? Unless they obviously are going to be paying back at a lower rate than what your elected local county government has already decided.
Okay, Rick?
Well, I think the TIF issue is absolutely a local issue. I think the locals ought to be making the decision of what percentage they want to give back, what TIFs they want to do. Voters have the right then to either accept that, vote them out of office, put somebody new in there. Once you turn that over to state agencies and stuff to regulate TIF areas, to me, it's never going to work. It's a local issue. And if somebody can figure out a formula in a local entity about giving some money to the schools and the libraries as that TIF is being done and get a percentage back to them, because they need help now. They don't need help 8 years down the line. The way tax dollars are right now and the economy, they need help now. So I'm all for locals making those decisions on TIFs and what percentage gets back, because if people don't like it, they got a recourse. If the state does it, it's very, very difficult to get those things changed.
Okay. One of the things that Indiana's been talking about is eliminating the it's a business tax with the personal property tax, and so the big question is, how do you replace it? What are your thoughts, Rick?
Well, the personal property tax, as elected officials, any of us never liked to tax. As a small business owner, we never liked to tax because we figured it was an unfair tax. You're paying a usage tax on the equipment that you go out and purchase. But you got to figure out what you're going to do to replace it. You know, a county like Lake County, 17% of their base is personal property. You get into the rural counties, a lot of their base is from agricultural assessment anymore because of the extreme price of farm machinery and stuff that's going on out there. So I don't like the Band-Aid approach that we did last session at all. I did not vote for it, to allow some local governments to eliminate their personal property tax, some counties to eliminate their personal property tax. I think the state goes in and restructures this. It should be for everyone. Everybody should be treated fairly because they know the bigger counties are not going to be able to it. It gives the smaller counties kind of an advantage to attract development and stuff if they eliminate their personal property tax. It's just a very unfair tax that needs to go. They did that 4 or 5 years ago with the inventory tax, the Schedule B on that personal property tax. They got rid of that. And they had a plan to, when they did that, they increased the sales tax to take care of that revenue that they were going to lose from that. But then that didn't work very well because the economy went down and the revenue did get replaced. So they got to be very careful with it. I think, again, it's a tax we don't need. It's a economic advantage for us if we don't have it because other states do not have it around us. But we have better workman's comp laws and stuff too to get businesses in here. But it's something that needs to be studied. We got to get a good plan of how we're going to replace it and how we're going to place it. It might be replaced from what we have already in the reserves and stuff we have. Maybe we can replace that tax without going after another tax or another fee we need to do. But that all has to be looked at. They did a summer study session on it. Hopefully when the session starts, they're going to have results back on that and we can determination how to go forward with it.
Okay.
The personal property tax, if they can eliminate that without hurting anything else or raising any others, that's great. If they can figure out how to do that, I don't understand why they haven't already done it. The small business tax, as a small business owner, my husband and I talked about this. Where do we stand on it? And it was really hard. It was really hard to say this. But because we are community members, because we have been there so many years, and because we do know that the burden that it would place upon others in the community, we decided that we were not in favor of doing away with the small business tax. We don't have a problem paying our share, and I think that that's what a lot of people, organizations, entities need to look at, is paying our share. It's when the share becomes unbalanced or unreasonable that there's a problem. And we do have budgets out there now that are unbalanced and unreasonable. These are the things we need to look at.
Okay. We should probably look at your priorities for the state budget. 2-year cycle coming up, Roxanna?
Well, obviously this is a point where Rick would have the advantage over me on that. Just to clarify something, Rick's not really the incumbent. We're both
Misspoke.
running for an open seat. But being from the House of Representatives, he would have still an advantage over me in regards to that. The budget. What I have followed through the newspaper, what I have researched on my own, my opinion, there are quite a few dollars that there's an absolute shell game going on with. One of the things that I have promised is greater accountability for the dollars of the state of Indiana, more transparency with the budgets. I know that anyone can go down and look at them, but try and figure it out. There needs to be better transparency. A lot of people think that that means being able to put a microscope or a magnifying glass on it. I think that should also encompass being able to understand it. You know, that to me is better transparency. So these are things that I would work on. Obviously, like I said, small business management and accounting, you betcha. I'm going to be looking at the numbers. So I'll be poring over those with specific interest in education.
Okay, Rick?
The obvious point that I look at is infrastructure. The infrastructure in Indiana needs to be brought up to par if we're going to get businesses to relocate here. We have locals that are falling behind in their road construction and stuff because of the transportation and the taxes not getting there what we need to have anymore. That revenue is falling short because cars are getting better mileage. Things are happening out there where that fund is falling short on getting what we need to do for infrastructure on roads and bridges. We need to look at that very strongly in the next session, in the next budget. Education is an issue that I had some pushback with my caucus on different issues. I didn't vote for the expansion of the vouchers. I don't like the formula in education right now of how each student gets their money, each school corporation gets the money for their students. Seems like the really good school systems are falling short of getting what they need. And then the ones that are in the federal program, the lunch program, are structured higherly. They're getting more per student. So we need to look at getting that formula more based. Because when I talk to the residents, and it's costing them, besides what they pay in taxes, $200-300 to register their children for school and buy books and stuff. It's coming from the operating balance and operating money from Indiana. That's what we fund now, the operating budget for education. The school funding issue that, which is a good bill we passed last session, was they used to do a student count every August, and that's what you were based on your enrollment for that year, the amount of money you would get per student. We did now, you do a second count in February. So if you're in a school system that's losing a lot of kids from dropout and stuff, it's going to affect your second enrollment. So they're going to be, it's very, very interesting to make sure that they keep their kids in school and make sure they just don't enroll kids to get a good base to start with, and then their kids drop out in September and October in those areas. So the second count's going to help. I think it might help get more money to the better school systems also that are falling short because they're on the back end of the funding mechanism.
Okay, speaking of education, that was my next question. So it was a good segue there, Rick. We were, we saw what, after the current budget was passed, we saw what the governor did to create the CC, the Center for Education and Career Innovation, as I recall. And, we've seen the tension between the state school board and the state superintendent. And so I'm curious whether you think that agency should be in the new budget, what you see coming next. Rick?
Okay. I'm going to start out by saying, the educational system I got down there, a lot of the voucher system stuff was there when I took office. The Common Core was there. And then we changed the Common Core. We decided to redo the Common Core. It's a very difficult last 2 years because we're changing things in the educational system for teachers, for students, for testing things, and we've got to get something stabilized of exactly how we're going to be doing this and the formula, what we're going to be going to the future with, because it's very unfair to teachers to try to get a new program in place now. I really like the idea of looking at each student's progress instead of looking at a total school grade factor of A, B, C, or D. Looking at where a student was last year and where he's at this year. If he's 15-20% better, then it's working. But just to keep giving schools grade factors and putting the total population together, I don't really care for that formula. Because there's a lot of schools in this state that are going to remain DNF schools. They're in an urban area, they're a very tough area, they have a lot of dropout. No matter what quality teachers you have, it's going to be very difficult to get that grade level up. So there was some pushback on the educational stuff for me last session. Some stuff I voted for. Whenever it came to giving choice and giving parents the opportunity to get their kids a better education, I voted for those issues because I thought that was very. You got to have something for your children. If you can't move out of your area, you want them to go to a better school. You can't afford a private school. So you got to give them a choice to get them somewhere else if that's what they need to do. And that's what my concept, and I voted for those issues to give those choices. But we got to make sure that all school systems on a level playing field, whether they're charter or public schools, make sure they all are going to be in the same formula. So if they're getting money from the state, that they're all treated the same. So, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, you had asked about the distinction between the two boards. or the separation of the two boards. I don't believe that the creation of the second board was necessary. We've always had the State Board of Education, and if they needed to expand the board, that was fine. But to create a second board that ties the hands of the first board, or that they can't interact, which would be ideal, then there's no purpose to it. Then to get on to the educational aspect of it, holding not only the schools responsible but the teachers responsible, I think is very unfair. That if the students don't perform well, then the teacher is going to somehow be blamed for that. I know that within my own family, each of us children learned at a different rate, and each person is an individual. I know with my grandchildren, they learn at different rates. So I don't think that you can hold a teacher responsible, not unless everyone in the entire classroom was doing poorly. Then maybe you can hold the teacher responsible. The voucher program, absolutely disagree with it. Private schools, if you want to send your children to private school, then you should pay to send your children to private school. That was the way that it was. That's the way that it should be. I'm not saying that we need to go backwards with all of this. There are some exceptions, but private school is private school. And if they are going to come up with a formula, they do need to make it equal. There should not be a distinction just because of where you live or what your school has done in the past. The formula needs to be the same. But in that formula, they also need to look at something else, and I've not heard anyone else bring this up, and that is that when the lottery was formed, those dollars were supposed to be going to education. How many more casinos do we have? Look at the revenue that is being produced from those casinos. Why are we getting farther in debt? As a county commissioner, we used to see those dollars come into our county. I know what we were getting on a county level. Why are we not making this? And if we have other entities that have opened up that educational dollars are automatically sent, then why are we failing so poorly with it?
And then you opened the conversation about how to and whether to make changes that would affect the casino industry. Everything from land-based gambling to tax cuts to land-based casinos, I should say. So, Roxanna?
I would not have a problem with allowing land-based casinos. There are a number of the casinos now that if you went out there and tried to float them anywhere within a quarter of a mile of where they're tied up, they wouldn't be able to move. They're already land-based for all intent purposes. I don't really know what difference it would make, whether they're tethered by a chain or whether they're tethered by a piece of concrete. The casinos are there. If they somehow think that it's going to change the amount of revenue, the only way I see that they could do that would be to increase the permits of casinos. And I understand they don't want to do that. So I virtually see no difference between land-based and floating casinos.
Okay, Rick?
Well, my take on casino money, when it first started over the years, was that it was a fund that was set up to bring extra money into to an entity, to a county, to a state. And as time went, as times got tougher, we relied more and more on that to fund our budgets. A lot of budgets are 17-20% of their budgets are casino money coming in, so now that revenue has dropped 17%. So now we're in trouble with that type of funding because we relied on it. Land-based casinos, I'm listening to any argument down there for or against it. I'm not any place in there that says yes or no. All I can say, I don't think it's the answer. The competition is out there. Casinos bring in another element that people forget about. A lot of people gamble that can't afford to gamble. They're out of revenue. All of a sudden they need help. They go to agencies looking for help. So I don't think casinos is the answer. I'm okay with looking at any kind of legislation to help us stay competitive with other states around us. Like, we got the Ohio and the Kentucky thing going on right now in Illinois. So I'm okay with that. But we rely too much on casino money over the years. And I think going forward, relying on that money as budget money and to help fund our local government and state government is not the right way to go. No.
Okay.
I'm always interested in what you hear from voters when you're out knocking on doors or whatever. Is it jobs, or what are the other couple other things you hear that's on their mind as this election comes forward? Rick?
You know, the main issues you hear about, that I hear about, is the job issue, of course. A lot of it, I also hear, is local control. I mean, we've had where the states are talking about holding a constitutional convention, trying to get their states' rights back. We got to be very careful as state legislators to do the same thing with our local government. We got to give them the tools to do what they need to do, and if they want to use those tools. But we can't mandate it. We can't make them do it. And I hear that a lot out there. There's government regulations. As a small business owner or as a governmental entity that you're putting too much on us. A prime example is the Clean Water Act that the federal government did. It was an unfunded mandate on the local government to fund, and we had to go in the county level. Counties had to go in the county level if your county was set up to do a Clean Water Act and fund that through the property taxes, basically, and through taxes. So those things we got to be, that's what I hear out there. Very careful that the jobs, of course, are there. Infrastructure is there. The educational issue is there. They're very concerned about their local schools dropping back in the funding mechanism that they're getting. And that's a legitimate concern, because if we push choice out there, we have to make sure that we fund those locals as strongly as we can, because I think most of those systems, they're not going to see a rate on the voucher system in their school system. A school like Lowell or Hebron or schools out in the country, where are they going to send their kids? They're charter schools. The charter schools aren't going to open up on those areas. They've always had their right over the years. And when I was going to school, to send their kids to to private school and to pay for that, there's a lot of residents out there that are not going to qualify for vouchers in certain areas, so they're not going to have that privilege of doing this. I don't think it's going to be a raid on our school system, but we have to make sure that we keep funding our school system, but everybody on a level playing field. Make sure our teachers are graded fairly. There's good teachers out there that need to be looked at, and just because you're teaching at a D or an F school doesn't mean you're a bad teacher.
Okay.
What I'm hearing about is the same thing. It's jobs and it's education. This seems to be the primary concerns all the way through, and that doesn't change from Dyer, Cherville to Robb to Oxford, and those are in Benton County. It doesn't change. It's the same. It's jobs and it's education. I go through on my walk list, and I've got a series of 5 things that I ask them, and it's always the same: jobs and education.
Okay. Well, I'm afraid we're about out of time. We have one more question. What sets you apart from your opponent? Roxanna?
Well, obviously, number one, that I'm a Democrat. But I think that Rick and I share a lot of the same views. I think that we both care very much for our constituency. The only difference that I see is that Rick has had 2 years at the State House, whereas I had 8 years in the county. And with that being said, I feel that 8 years at the county level may better qualify me, because I've been more in touch with the people than in legislatures hammering back and forth. Sometimes when we get into these think tanks or special sessions and whatnot, we kind of forget who's driving us, and who we're supposed to be serving. As a county commissioner, as a business owner in a small town, I'm in the grocery store, people come up to me and they talk to me. I'm at the gas pumps, you can't get away, they're talking to you. They will even stop and tell you that you're mowing your grass wrong. So I feel that I've been in constant contact with the population, and I just want to serve them better and more realistically. And I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid to call Indianapolis out on some of the things that they're just being a little ridiculous about. There are issues that we haven't talked about here today, and hopefully they'll no longer be issues that took up a lot of time last session. There's some issues that we haven't talked about that I know will come up again And if I'm sitting down there, I won't let this happen. This, we need to use our time and our dollars wisely to represent our populace.
Okay, Rick?
Well, this is my qualifications. I've only been 2 years in the state legislature. I was 24 years township trustee assessor dealing with assessing and public safety and drainage and general assistance, and I was 2 years on the county level. I think I've worked my way up from the bottom to the top. It was the greatest form of government, whether you like township government or not in this state, is township government. You meet people every day. You do stuff for them every day. They know who you are. And that was a great training ground to where I got to be in the state senate in 12 when I ran. So I haven't been to state senate very long, state rep very long, 2 years. It's a good learning experience. I'm ready to take that on to the senate. I think experience means a lot, just like Roxanne said, but I can't think of anybody that has more local experience in local government in South County, in Newton, and areas that I need to represent. This is a very diversified district. You've got to be able to look at agriculture issues, which West Creek Township was 80% agriculture in their assessments and stuff that I did for 24 years in the drainage issues. You got to be able to look at the small business issues, small town issues. It's so much different in Newton and Benton County than the urban county of Lake County. So you got to be able, you're going to represent a lot of union people in Lake County and a lot of small businesses. Same thing when you get to Newton, Benton County. So you got to be able to shift gears. You got water issues down there. You got things that are going to be coming up in the future with farming and those type of issues that need to be looked at. And I've been involved in that area all my life, and I think I have the ability to go forward and take that to the state senate.
Okay, well, I'm afraid that's all the time we have. This has been an endorsement interview with Republican Roxanna Hanford.
Wrong.
Or Democrat. Let me start that over. I'm afraid that's all the time we have for this endorsement interview with Roxanna Hanford, Democratic candidate for State Senate in the 6th District, and challenger Rick Niemeyer, the Republican, who is now in the State House, looking to move up to the State Senate. Thank you for viewing.
Thank
Thank
Doug.
you.
Thanks.